every night for 43 years. Gene Kelly stood before the bathroom mirror in his Beverly Hills home and whispered the same 3 words, "I am sorry." Danny, his wife Patricia, never understood why her husband talked to his reflection, never knew who Danny was, never suspected that Hollywood's most confident performer was haunted by a ghost only he could see. But at 2:17 a.m. on February 1st, 1996, the night before Kelly died, he finally revealed the secret that had been consuming him since 1953. And the reason he could never forgive himself for becoming famous, the confession that would explain a lifetime of midnight apologies, began with the most innocent request imaginable. "Gene, can you teach me to dance like you?" The words belonged to Danny Kowalski, Kelly's 8-year-old neighbor in 1953. A Polish immigrant's son with clubbed feet and dreams bigger than his broken body could support. What Kelly said in response to that question would create the deepest regret of his entire life. "Kid, some people are born to dance, and some people aren't. You will find your own thing." It was the cruelest kindness Kelly ever offered, and the rejection that would echo in his bathroom mirror every night until the day he died. The guilt that drove Kelly to nightly confessions began in the summer of 1953, when he was at the peak of his Hollywood powers. Singin' in the Rain had made him immortal. An American in Paris had earned him international acclaim, and the world was convinced that Gene Kelly could do no wrong. But success had made Kelly protective of his time, suspicious of people who wanted pieces of his attention, cynical about the endless stream of requests from fans who thought proximity to greatness might somehow transform their own lives. Danny Kowalski lived 3 houses down from Kelly's Rodeo Drive mansion. In the modest apartment where his parents cleaned houses for wealthy families who barely acknowledged their existence, the boy spent every afternoon sitting on his front steps, watching Kelly leave for the studio, return from premieres, live the kind of magical life that existed only in movies. Danny's feet were severely deformed, turned inward at impossible angles, locked in positions that made walking painful and running impossible. But when he watched Gene Kelly move, something lit up inside him that had nothing to do with physical limitation and everything to do with pure, uncomplicated joy. "Mama says Mr. Kelly is the best dancer in the whole world," Danny told his mother in broken English, his eyes never leaving Kelly's front door. "Maybe he could help me dance too." Anna Kowalski looked at her son's twisted limbs and felt her heart break for the 1,000th time. "Dancing is not for boys like you, Danny. Dancing is for perfect people." But Danny Kowalski had inherited his father's stubborn optimism and his mother's unshakable faith that America was a place where impossible dreams sometimes came true. For 3 weeks, Danny worked up the courage to approach his famous neighbor. He practiced what he would say, how he would walk up Kelly's driveway without stumbling, how he would prove that despite his deformed feet, he had rhythm in his heart. The opportunity finally came on a Saturday morning in July, when Kelly was washing his car in the driveway, and Danny was watching from his usual spot on the front steps. "Mr. Kelly?" Danny's voice was barely audible as he limped across the street, his twisted feet making every step a small act of courage. Kelly looked up from his Cadillac, immediately recognizing the Polish kid who was always staring at his house with the kind of desperate admiration that made Kelly uncomfortable. "What do you want, son?" Danny took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of bravery he possessed. "Mr. Kelly, I have been watching you dance in the movies, and I was wondering, could you maybe teach me? I know my feet aren't good, but I think I could learn. I think I could be like you." The question hung in the warm California air like a prayer offered to a god who might or might not be listening. Kelly looked down at this earnest 8-year-old with his mangled feet in desperate hope, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine pity. Not the performative compassion he displayed at charity events, but real, uncomfortable sympathy for someone whose dreams were so obviously impossible. "Kid," Kelly said, his voice gentler than usual, but still carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Dancing isn't something you can just learn. It is something you are born with. And honestly, with feet like yours." He paused, trying to find words that would be kind but clear. "Maybe you should focus on things you can actually do well." Danny's face crumpled, but he didn't cry. Instead, He nodded with the terrible understanding of someone learning that not all dreams are meant to come true. I understand, Mr. Kelly. Thank you for telling me the truth. Kelly watched the boy limp back across the street, feeling satisfied that he had handled an awkward situation with appropriate kindness. He had spared Danny years of futile effort, saved him from the inevitable disappointment that came from pursuing goals beyond his physical capabilities. It was, Kelly told himself, the responsible thing to do. But what Kelly didn't know was that his rejection had just broken something inside Danny Kowalski that would never heal, and that the consequences of his casual dismissal would haunt both their lives forever. 3 weeks later, Kelly learned what had happened to the boy whose dreams he had crushed. Danny's parents had enrolled him in a special school for disabled children, not because they wanted to, but because Danny had stopped speaking after his encounter with Kelly. The 8-year-old who had once chattered constantly about dance moves and movie stars now spent his days staring silently at the wall, his spirit so thoroughly broken that doctors worried he might never recover. He won't eat, won't play, won't talk, Anna Kowalski told Kelly when she appeared at his door 3 weeks after the rejection. Ever since he talked to you, my Danny is like a ghost. What did you say to my boy? Kelly stared at this Polish mother, whose broken English carried more dignity than any Hollywood speech he had ever heard, and realized he was looking at the human cost of his casual cruelty. I told him dancing might not be realistic for someone with his condition. Anna's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Kelly, you were his hero. When you said he couldn't dance, you didn't just break his dream. You broke his heart. You broke his spirit. You broke my little boy. That night, for the first time, Kelly stood before his bathroom mirror and whispered, I am sorry. Danny. It was the beginning of a ritual that would consume the rest of his life. The guilt that drove Kelly to nightly confessions wasn't just about rejecting a disabled child's request for dance lessons. It was about the recognition that his words had been the final blow that shattered Danny's spirit, that his casual dismissal had stolen something from an 8-year-old that could never be returned. Kelly realized, too late, that Danny hadn't been asking for professional training or realistic career advice. He had been asking for hope, for connection, for someone to see past his deformed feet to the rhythm that lived in his heart. And Kelly, protected by success and blinded by his own understanding of what bodies could and couldn't do, had looked at Danny Kowalski and seen only limitation. I could have said yes, Kelly whispered to his reflection that first night. I could have spent one afternoon showing him how to move to music. I could have given him that. But Kelly had been too busy, too important, too convinced that his time was better spent on projects that would enhance his own legend rather than nurture someone else's impossible dream. The nightly apologies became Kelly's way of carrying Danny's memory, of acknowledging that his casual rejection had contributed to the breaking of a young spirit. As months passed, Kelly learned more about Danny Kowalski's story through updates from Anna, who would occasionally stop by to tell Kelly about her son's slow, painful recovery. Danny eventually began speaking again, but the bright spark that had once animated him was gone. He stopped watching movies, stopped listening to music, stopped believing that ordinary people like him could aspire to extraordinary things. He is alive, but he is not living. Anna told Kelly one afternoon, you took away his dreams, Mr. Kelly. And without dreams, what is a little boy? The guilt shaped Kelly's career in ways that no one around him could fully understand. He became obsessively generous with young dancers, especially those who struggled with physical limitations or lacked conventional training. He funded scholarships for disabled students, donated time to therapeutic dance programs, used his influence to create opportunities for performers who might otherwise be overlooked. But no amount of charity could quiet the voice in Kelly's head that whispered accusations every time he looked in the mirror. You broke a little boy's spirit. You stole his hope. You chose your own comfort over his dreams. Patricia Kelly sometimes heard her husband talking to his reflection, but she assumed it was a quirk of someone who had spent his life performing for cameras and audiences. She never suspected that Jean's nightly conversations were confessions to a ghost, apologies to a child whose spirit Kelly had helped to break. Who is Danny? She asked once, during their early years of marriage. After overhearing one of Kelly's midnight apologies, "Just someone I should have helped," Kelly replied, unable to explain that Danny Kowalski was the most important person in his life. Not because of what they had shared, but because of what Kelly had refused to share. Years later, Kelly would learn the rest of Danny's story. The boy grew up to become a quiet man who worked in his father's grocery store, never married, never pursued any creative endeavors, never spoke about the dreams he had once harbored. He lived a small, safe life, protected from further disappointment by the walls he had built around his heart. After Gene Kelly taught him that some dreams weren't worth pursuing, Danny never danced again. Anna told Kelly during their final conversation, when she was an old woman and Kelly was already feeling the weight of his own mortality. Not even at his own wedding that never happened. Not even when he was happy. "You didn't just tell him he couldn't be a dancer, Mr. Kelly. You told him he couldn't dream." But there was one afternoon in 1974 that nearly broke Kelly completely. He had parked his car across the street from the Kowalski family grocery store, watching a man in his late 20s sweeping the sidewalk. It was Danny, his clubbed feet still twisted, his walk still painful. But it wasn't his feet that made Kelly weep behind his sunglasses. It was the way Danny moved to the broom with a mechanical, joyless rhythm. The boy who had once found music in everything now moved through the world in total silence. Kelly put his hand on the car door handle, his heart pounding against his ribs. He wanted to cross the street, wanted to grab that broom, wanted to tell the grown man what he should have told the little boy 20 years ago. "You are worthy. You are enough. I was wrong." For 10 minutes, Kelly sat there, paralyzed by the magnitude of his own shame. If he crossed the street, he would have to admit his cruelty. He would have to look into the eyes of the life he had diminished. In the end, cowardice won again. Kelly started the engine and drove away, leaving Danny alone on the sidewalk, sweeping dust into piles that would never become art. That night, the apology in the bathroom mirror was different. It wasn't just, "I am sorry, Danny." It was, "I am sorry, I am still too weak to fix what I broke." The confession that revealed Kelly's 43 years of guilt came on his final night, when he was too weak to stand, but still determined to complete his ritual of remorse. "Patricia," Kelly whispered from his deathbed, his voice barely audible, "I need to tell you about Danny." What followed was the first time Kelly had ever spoken Danny Kowalski's name aloud. The first time he had shared the story of the 8-year-old boy whose spirit he had helped to break with casual cruelty. "I could have said yes," Kelly repeated, tears streaming down his face. "I could have spent one afternoon teaching him that dancing was about joy, not perfection. I could have shown him that movement comes from the heart, not from perfect feet." Patricia listened to her husband confess his deepest regret, finally understanding why the most confident performer she had ever known had spent decades apologizing to his own reflection. "Gene," she said softly, "you were human. You made a mistake. I broke a little boy's spirit," Kelly replied, "and he spent the rest of his life believing he wasn't worthy of dreams." Kelly's final words, spoken to the bathroom mirror, one last time, with Patricia's help, were the same ones he had whispered every night for 43 years. "I am sorry, Danny. I am sorry I didn't see what you were trying to show me. I am sorry I chose my comfort over your hopes. I am sorry I taught you that some people aren't worthy of dreams, when the truth is that dreams are worthy of everyone." Gene Kelly died 12 hours later, finally free from the nightly ritual that had defined his private life for nearly half a century. At his funeral, an elderly woman approached Patricia Kelly with tears in her eyes and a photograph in her hands. "Mrs. Kelly, my name is Anna Kowalski. I think your husband knew my son, Dan." The photograph showed an 8-year-old boy with twisted feet and bright eyes, captured mid-motion as he attempted to recreate Gene Kelly's famous pose from Singin' in the Rain. "Danny loved your husband so much," Anna said, even when he stopped believing in himself. He never stopped believing that Mr. Kelly was the greatest dancer who ever lived. He just stopped believing that greatness was for people like him. Patricia stared at the photograph, seeing for the first time the child whose memory had haunted her husband's nights, whose broken spirit had taught Kelly that the most important performance of his life had nothing to do with stages or cameras. It was about the moment when someone asks you to share their impossible dream, and you choose encouragement over expertise, hope over realism, connection over convenience. Gene Kelly's nightly apologies to Danny Kowalski revealed the truth about greatness, that it is not measured by what you accomplish for yourself, but by what you are willing to give to others. Especially those whose dreams seem impossible, whose bodies seem broken, whose hope seems foolish. The mirror that reflected Kelly's guilt for 43 years ultimately reflected something more important: the recognition that every person who asks for help with their dreams deserves to be met with possibility rather than limitation, with encouragement rather than expertise, with the understanding that sometimes the most important dance is the one you teach, not the one you perform.